Several government officials spoke out following last night's debate between President Biden and former President Trump.
One of those officials, our very own North Dakota governor and potential Trump VP pick, Doug Burgum, sharing his criticism of President Biden's performance during the debate.
The big issues on the voters' minds are immigration, which isn't really about immigration. It's about national security and public safety, and inflation. And we heard no answers from President Biden tonight on either one of those topics.
Governor Burgum also praising Trump's performance in last night's debate, calling him both strong and thoughtful.
As we know, he's been campaigning for former President Trump across several states in recent weeks.